Okay, we're going to have a look at Zoe Varney's game now, and congratulations to her. She's had an amazing result at the weekend. She beat David Eggleston, who's an IM, has been an IM for many years, often had very good showings in the British Championships. He's made 3 GM norms over the course of his career. The only thing that's held him back possibly from the GM title has been a deflation in the system. So Zoe's done a fabulous job to get to this WFM. She's had some setbacks recently in her career. I remember a few years ago she had a very bad Hastings. She was very upset about that performance. But she's always been working hard. I've always felt that she's been a good player. I've always sensed that she's had a lot of talent for chess. But I felt that her lack of self-belief has held her back. And there's certain things that she needed to fix. And she's managed to fix a lot of those weaknesses in her game by working hard on chessable courses. For example, one of the weaknesses in her game was that she would try too hard to do everything, every position. And sometimes she'd go gung-ho. Now she's starting to get it together. So anyway, let's have a look at this game, see how it against David. So this is all preparation and by Zoe. She does work fairly hard on chess, even though she's got a full-time job. So example for us all, my opening theory is not that great. If I had her openings with my talent, so... But, David went nice. The problem with all this stuff by black is very committal. The queen on h4 has been attacked by the knight. So you're kind of, to some degree, when you get this structure, you're kind of committed to some kind of sacrifice, right? Because in theory, if you just play normal moves, let's say, for example, I went here. White would probably go bishop d3. Let's just play pass moves and just to show you what could happen, what could go wrong. Well, this position is probably already not very good for in fact, last move that was a blunder, sorry, b5, because you're walking into queen c2 forking. But if you played something like knight here, let's say, you weren't blundering any material. How do you assess this position? Queen c2. This is already very bad for black, probably. I think this is the sort of thing that David was concerned about, and that's why he ended up sacrificing material. What's the engine saying here? Already losing position because you're all dressed up and nowhere to go. So going back to the game, black felt committed to sacrifice. He could have actually. I think the engine said knight b6. What was knight b6? Still better for white. You played king g1, hit the queen, but there is some kind of weird sack like rook f3. You don't want to take with a queen because of knight takes d4. That's better for black. So you take with a pawn, and then we go knight c4. Yeah, there's some kind of practical chances here, isn't there? You're hitting a knight. If you take, then the bishop can eventually will go b5. So the line it's given is here, and I'd be slightly concerned here as white, I must admit. In a proper game. I remember back in the day, I used to play a lot of these kind of variations against Simon Williams in Blitz. He'd often go for these lines where black ends up sacking and getting loads of play, and he'd even sack a rook. And he'd go like Simon would play that move without thinking, rook f3. That's the kind of move that he would have played. And we had some good battles, because I used to share a flat with Simon. We used to play these kind of variations a lot. And I'd be on the white side normally. Simon was like an advocate of the French. But in this variation, Eggleston decided to sacrifice, which is very committal. And apparently this is not very good. So the best line is something like, I think it's something like taking. This is what David said after the game. And well, the computer says bishop d6, so you do have some long-term compensation for the piece. Yeah, I think in a practical game as well, you know, sometimes you have to weigh out the practical chances. I think in a practical game, it's not easy for white to convert here. You know, you can, I mean, you already threatening knight g4 and e5. It's not easy. And there was also, apparently there's some line like this as well, knight g4, and then here you go e5, very clever idea. And yeah, it's hard to react to all this, because if you take with a knight, well, simply take back and then go checkmate. Well, it's going to be checkmate. So there are some drawbacks to the white position. Apparently after e5 you have to move h3 and white's still better. But yeah, not easy to see all this, right? But instead David played, he took and went queen e7. Apparently he's already in trouble. So the best move here was bishop d3. And then you just go for king g2, and white's really in a great spot. Like bishop d7, the rook comes to e1. Yeah, and then the rook simply is very hard for black to go e5 and actually do anything with these pawns. And also the pawn on f3 does a good job of holding up like e5, e4 anyway. Even if you manage to get that in. Even if you manage to get e5 in without dropping. So you could play that, for example. But then I go queen g4. And now here I'm going to run into knight f5. Yeah, so... Okay, I needed the engine to see all that. But Zoe didn't play the most accurate moves around about here. So he kind of let... Rook d1 was... Actually, that looks like a weird move. Why go rook d1? I don't understand that move. Because the queen is covering d5, so you can't go e5 anyway. Yeah, so already apparently David was doing quite well. He went rook f8, he went g6, that was okay. Yeah, maybe king h8 wasn't the best move. Apparently there was some move like bishop c5 was good. Was it bishop c5? Yeah, it was already better for black. He was afraid of this. But yeah, you can even go, I think he said there was something like rook c8, right? You could run with a king to f8, but the computer's saying you go here and then take, and then, wow, this is crazy. Bishop g5. Yeah, the main point is that if you take, instead, that's obviously going to be bad because, you know, you open up your lines to the king. But you go, this is a crazy variation. d4, bishop g5. Wow, that's insane. d3. Not king e1 probably because of bishop e4, but king g2. Queen d7. It's understandable that David lost this game. When you look how complicated it was. And, you know, I don't think he was actually, I think he was bothered. But once he realised how sharp the game was, how complicated the game was, and Zoe played a pretty good game overall, then it was more understandable to lose that game. So, see, ran with a king, I like that. It's a good idea. So you can't take on h5 clearly because you're going to get checkmated. So he went e5, which seems like a reasonable option. Bishop h6, rook e8. Yeah, and I think this is where David went badly wrong. He should have gone, apparently he should have played queen e6 was the best move. Where the game is probably in the balance, right? Well, maybe black's even doing quite well. I mean, you could take and go knight g3. I don't see what's wrong with that. Why can't you just trade and go here? Are you worse here as white? Well, I mean, obviously black would have play, right? But it's hard to believe you're going to be worse here. No, you're clearly better. That's what I would have played. But yeah, queen e6 was a better option. Queen f8 was already bad, because then she goes in for the Zoe Varney puzzle tricks. All the chessable training paying off with queen h4, good move. And yeah, very clever tactics. The idea is you here, then you have this kind of puzzle rush kind of finish. Rook g8. So yeah, she's very sharp, Zoe. Bishop check, king d1. And then she just brutally decided, right, I'm going to dismantle him in the endgame. H4, H5. I think also David, you know, all due respect to him, he doesn't play much, right? He doesn't play enough. Like, you know, like the problem that I was saying that I have. And he does, yeah, he's a full-time chess teacher. He works at a school called Royal Grammar School in Newcastle, which is fairly close to me as well. But he doesn't have time really to play chess tournaments. So when he does play, he's a bit rusty, you know, and he lost 2-0 like this weekend. He lost to Spielman as well. So I think I would say to David, probably do a bit of work on your chess when you're at home, you know, rather than... You've got enough hours in the day to do it. There's no excuse. So bad David. Bad David, not doing enough work on your chess. So now the threat is to take, and long term you're going to get ground down in this endgame. So rook f4 was a good move. But she carried on. h5 was an excellent move. Yeah, she's just winning technically now. And h6 again. The old Zoe would not have found h6, I think. But the new Zoe understands, create a weakness. The pawn, don't allow black to fix the weakness with h6 themselves. Fix the pawn on g5, so go h6, create ideas on knight h5. This is where she's strong, in active stuff. When you got to play active moves and it's you know, it's justified, then she's strong. Where she falls down sometimes is where she's trying to play active moves all the time. But you got to play to your style, right? So this makes sense. You know, in a position like this where you have to play actively, she's a very strong player. So e3, yeah, this is just desperation stuff because you're even losing that kind of tension in the centre with e3. So bishop d3 now feels like a good move, yeah. King e2. Well, king e2 probably also winning, but knight e4 was good enough. So now threatening the pawn. So he was very short of time. But she didn't make any mistakes. She just took the pawn and came back. And then David resigned. So a brilliant win by Zoe. She's going from strength to strength. That's good to see because she's a teammate of mine. I think one of her main ambitions is to potentially get back in the Olympiad team. She's kind of on the borderline for getting there. But now she's got the WFM title. Now she's got someone like a scout like David. She's now a strong contender to get in the England women's team for the next Olympiad. So there's fingers crossed she'll do that and hopefully also go from strength to strength and potentially get over 2200. That's got to be the next aim, right? That's going to be tough. It's tough now. I mean, if I was 2100 now, I probably wouldn't be confident myself of getting over 2200 because there's so many underrated juniors around. You're playing them every tournament. It's just become so difficult now, chess. So, yeah. Anyway, well done, Zoe. And, yeah, that was a great scalp.